And welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. This is November 2021. Hey guys, we don't have a guest today. Josh Mallerman was going to be on, but he begged off because his niece really wanted to take him to a concert or go to her concert or something like that. So I told him be a good uncle. That's more important. Yeah. So we'll get him on at a later date. And if you go to lovecraftezine.com and you click on podcasts and scroll down, at the coming year, you'll see I'm trying to fit in a few more slots without guests, like maybe one a month, because I know the audience likes that as well. So anyway, thanks to the audience for telling me we sound good. I don't see DeBronzo. You better be there. You better be there. Hey, Alan. All right, let's do introductions and then chat about whatever comes to mind. Matt?
Okay, my name is Matt. I help run the Lovecraft eZine movie night. The thing that I mainly do is hand out prizes, and we've got a nice one today.
Ooh.
This is a sort of anthology comic from France called Le Monde de Lovecraft. It's beautiful. The art is beautiful. It's, I think, adaptations of like The Nameless City and Dagon.
Yeah, you don't need to speak French. Just
No,
look at the art.
I look at the pictures. What the heck? I mean, that's what I do with the English books.
I've heard that before.
Anyway, if you want to win this really terrific book, all you have to do is enter by sending an email to ezineprizes@gmail.com. Put Monde, M-O-N-D-E-S, in the subject heading. We will draw a winner usually in 5 or 6 weeks, and maybe it'll be you.
There's DeBronzo. Bridget?
Hello, I am Bridget, final girl, write music and draw things.
Let's
And
see.
and unrequited samurai.
Right, she's got a samurai sword behind her for those who are listening later.
Don't mess with her. She
just
actually
for protection. It's for zombies.
From Bryn Mawr, from her husband.
No.
Rick, why don't you introduce yourself?
Rick Lay, writer and pulp magazine collector.
And Hammer film expert.
I guess so.
All right. And we have two guest panelists today, Andrew Gloss and Bill Richardson. Hey guys, thanks for being here. You guys are really big supporters and I appreciate that. And I wanted to get you on. I don't know how many times Andrew's retweeted my stuff and he became a patron recently and so did Bill. So thank you guys.
And if this was a sports cast, they'd be athletic supporters. It's great.
Anyway, that's right.
So Bill, why don't you tell us about those
wait a minute.
paintings?
Can these two guys introduce themselves first?
Well,
we don't even know who they are.
He's got some cool pictures.
All right. Well, we'll start with Andrew, and then Bill can introduce himself and tell you about his pictures.
And then Bill, introduce the pictures too. I am Andrew Gloss. I guess if you're a Twitter person, you might know me as the Weirdling because that's where everyone calls me over there. Sort of an homage to the great weird fiction tradition. And
that's at Twitter. That's the _weirdling, isn't it? I think. Yeah,
the _weirdling. Yeah.
Right.
And I write reviews for HorrorBound.net, and am just a huge, massive horror nerd. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Bill.
Hey everybody, it's Bill Richardson. Been a filmmaker for many decades. I'm an author now, writing books. Got one out here called Hellfighters. It's out right now. I was asked to talk about
I got two of these.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Sweet stuff.
Bill Richardson, Hellfighters. You guys should check that out. So.
And a really cool audio book. It's on Audible right now called More Than Evil. That's full on. It's almost like the old time radio shows that you guys do on Wednesday.
Oh, so just Tuesday. But are you serious? It's not.
Yeah, no.
Audio. Okay. Yeah, because one of these books I held up was
effects.
More Than Evil.
It's all effects, lots of music. I use my filmmaking background. It's just got a really lush soundscape to it. It's just, and horror is so good for that, but you just don't hear it much because it's so expensive to do it.
Well,
And
you knew I'd like that, Bill. I wasn't aware. It's great.
I'll send you, actually, you've got some promo codes. So use one of those promo codes that you're going to give away on Patreon, and I'll send you another one.
Yeah, I'm gonna. I've got, what is it, 3 for the US and 3 for the UK.
Yeah.
And I'll be sending a message to the patrons. So,
And I'll send you another one. As far as the art, let's see. This
yeah,
one
he's
over
got a
here on
lot
the
of.
end.
For those who can't see, Bill's got a lot of artwork behind
Let's
him.
see. Let me see if I can do that a little bit. So I've been collecting popular culture and comic art since 1999. And I've got an enormous collection. And these are just the things that I love enough to put on the walls. The one on this end, this is a Vulcan Braga. It's Magic the Gathering art. And if you've never looked at this guy's stuff, it looks like the classic paintings of the Renaissance. This guy is amazing. He's just seriously cool. This one here is Dave McKean. Dave McKean is the guy that did the Sandman covers for Neil Gaiman's Sandman. And this particular one is for the Labyrinth. They reissued the Labyrinth, a comic book version of the Labyrinth. And so you see Dave Bowie there. And in that little ball is 2 characters for Dave McKean's from one of Dave McKean's movies. And then this one is by Alex Ross. Alex Ross is the guy that did Kingdom Come, which was that amazing DC series. And on the end here, the last one over there, that's Minton Matthews. He goes by Minton 3. He's done stuff for X-Files and 30 Days a Night. And he and I collaborated on a book. Excuse me?
That's Menton 3, you mean?
Menton 3.
Yeah, okay. He was the one who did the adaptation of The Hound when the Joe Lansdale Dunwich Horror riff came out. And his covers and art were the absolute highlight.
He is tremendous. He's got just a really, really interesting style. This is not out and it's away from being out, but he and I collaborated on this book that's called Paradise No More. And the only way I can describe it, this is just a pre copy of it, but it's sort of an industrial fantasy. So it's just I've not released this yet. It's a lot of pandemic related issues, but I've been collecting his art for years, and then got to work on that book and a couple others that are in the offing.
Yeah, everyone's got an excuse. I was sick. I had COVID. The world stopped.
Well, the really problem is you can't get stuff from China anymore, and that's where all the printing's done.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. If you want to look at Bill on Amazon, it's 1 L in your name, isn't it?
Yeah.
B-I-L.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's chat. Okay. First of all, if you go to lovecraftezine.com and click on events at the top, it's sort of the top middle, one of the links there. I've added an event, a really cool thing. It's like Clubhouse, or as my son reminded me, I just blanked on it. But anyway, we do this on Sundays. Tuesdays, we do the Old Time Radio show. And then on Wednesdays now, we do, in the daytime, we do Twitter Spaces. That's something I just started, and I think that's going to be pretty cool. I thought I added that on here, but no. So if you're on Twitter, if you're not on Twitter, this won't interest you. But if you are, just go to my profile, and I've got it pinned to the top of my profile. Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So anyway, all right. Why don't we start with the Hammer films? You guys wanted to talk about Hammer films, your favorite Hammer films, or tell the audience if they haven't watched them where they should start, and/or what do you consider to be the best ones?
Yes.
Yeah. Who wants to start? Rick, Andrew?
I could say the least controversial thing about good Hammer films, which is that the best Hammer films are the ones that star Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
Right.
If you have Hammer and Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing on it, that's a trifecta right there. You're in for a good time.
Yeah.
That's got to be like the least controversial thing anyone could ever say about Hammer.
I actually had mentioned doing this topic because I watched all of these movies like in the 60s and 70s and not much since. And I've basically, a lot of them have become a blur. So I decided, what the heck? For the first time in ages, I started playing Captain Kronos Vampire Hunter. Now, the thing that was striking to me about this, watching the credits, is the person who was the fight coordinator was a guy named William Hobbs. William Hobbs is a legend in the industry for fencing simulation. He is a master fencer himself. I don't know if he's still alive, but for example, he was the one who choreographed the dueling in Rob Roy. He coordinated all of the duels and fight scenes in the wonderful 1973-74 Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers, which has the best, absolute best fencing in any movie that's really ever been made. It's just absolutely terrific. He even appears in that movie as a Bravo fighting one of the Musketeers. So they actually had some real talent working on their films. So just see William Hobbs up there, like, wow, that's like, he was a master.
Doesn't he play the villain at the end of Captain Kronos?
I don't think so. I don't know, to be honest. I'll look it up.
You have to look at IMDb. Yeah, he would be Lord something.
Well, so my excuse is I didn't have a TV growing up. So when I was able to watch movies, I kind of watched them, from 80s on, 70s on. So I've not ever gotten around to the Hammer films. So for me or anyone else who has not gotten around to, I know I've seen a couple in the distant past, but not recently. So where should I start? Like, my main interest is, I like, werewolves, mummies, vampires, all that classic stuff.
Well, I'd like to put in a plug first for there's a few really good documentaries about Hammer. So if you're just wanting to learn about them and kind of get a feeling for what it's about and what you might like, one of them's called Hammer, the Studio That Dripped Blood. That one's a really great documentary. And then there's also,
are these like on YouTube or Netflix?
Yeah, actually they're free on YouTube right now.
Okay.
There's another,
like an hour long too.
Yeah, it's really easily watchable in a sitting. And another one is there's The History of Horror with Mike Gaddis, which was a BBC docu-series, and the second episode in the series is all about Hammer films. And that one, actually, I just came across this last week, and it's really good as well. It's about an hour long. So if you're just wanting to get a quick history on Hammer films, those are some really approachable documentaries that are fun to watch.
And
there's also a documentary called Flesh and Blood, which was on DVD, which had interviews with Cushing and Lee, and nearly everybody involved was Hammer.
The reference that you need if you want it in print is this recently released Complete Hammer, essentially like an encyclopedia, where they discuss all the actors, directors, and the people who worked on the film.
So jealous. That's definitely on my list.
That's the only reason I showed it.
Just to make me jealous.
Right.
How can you be jealous? You got a samurai sword, Matt doesn't.
Yeah,
well, if you were here right
gotta
now,
have an edge somewhere.
Here, ma'am, take the
All right, so where do we go from here? Andrew, you want to start? What are some of your favorites?
We're making recommendations for people.
Or just you can look at it as your favorites too, whatever you want to do.
I think like the best places for starting are probably like the Mummy and Curse of Frankenstein and the Horror of Dracula. I think like those are like the three, like those are the three that really launched them as almost an entirely horror project. So they settled into that when it was lucrative. The studio wasn't originally designed to be like a horror studio. And they're all great. All of them are great. They've all got Lee and they all have Christopher Lee in them. Two of them have Peter Cushing in it. So my trifecta thing works, for two out of those three. And Yeah, I mean, they both for the studio launched a whole bunch of spin-offs, which are also all worth it.
Did you ever see The Reptile?
I've seen it.
I've wanted to see that. I think I might have seen it. I might have been under age 10, but it's not streaming and I didn't want to buy the DVD. I was just trying to remember, is it as good as I remember it?
It's very good. It's got a great looking female monster and snake woman. It's directed.
Yeah,
I'm
for half the population, that's a draw for Hammer films. They have gorgeous women always.
Well, there was so when Hammer really was getting its stride, it's when Hollywood had moved on to creature features in the 50s. And so Hammer really found an opening to go kind of back to that gothic, but they didn't have the same censor issues that America had. So yeah, you get a lot of pretty ladies and lots of gore and things that you didn't have in the Universal films.
So like in color too.
So I think Captain Kronos, did it come out in like 72?
73 or 4, I think.
74
it's
sounds
there somewhere.
more like it.
I think I was like, if it was 74, I was like 15, 16 years old. So when that scene where the woman takes off her clothes and comes up to Captain Kronos, of course they don't show a damn thing, but it's like, I'm getting like,
You're still bitter about that.
Well, she was.
That was Caroline Munro, who was in Core and The Spy Who Loved Me, and
she's still acting.
yeah.
She's got a movie due out in 2023.
But she is one of the most beautiful women who ever been in a horror movie.
When
At any rate, so like I watched Hammer mainly for the intellectual dialogue and stuff.
what was the first Hammer movie?
Well, going
Curse
way
of
back,
Frankenstein.
well,
I think
before
Quatermass.
they did the Quatermass films.
Yeah, it's the Quatermass
yeah.
movies. Yeah. But
I have
that
seen
was
those.
their-
Yeah.
They were started as a distribution company, and Quatermass was their first one that they actually made themselves.
That's
And
right.
you
Curse
get-
of Frankenstein was the first like real official horror.
Quatermass was
That was their
technically
first big
science
money
fiction.
maker. Yeah.
It was technically science fiction, but I was listening. Sandy Peterson just did a talk on the Quatermass films, and he pointed out that they took
Which are great, by the way. I highly recommend those. Those are wonderful. And I think all on YouTube.
Well, what Sandy mentioned was they took a poll of the audience, asked what they liked about the movie. They said they liked the horror elements, and that sort of pushed Hammer into going into classic horror and remaking eventually all the Universal movies.
Yeah, what are we talking about here? What years, roughly?
That's like the
Quatermass
late
came,
50s.
yeah, well, Curse of Frankenstein comes out, I think, around 58.
hmm
And I think the Quatermass films were more like, I think the first one was like around 55 or so.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I remember from one of the documentaries, one of the things that they really liked about doing the project of Frankenstein was that Mary Shelley was dead. There was no
Yeah, I really
royalties
like
to pay.
that
There
too.
were no rights issues, and that is, of course, it had been 20 years since Universal had done a Frankenstein, so they liked the fact that as long as they kept the visuals not like Universal, that they would probably be okay.
That's a strength of the movie, don't you think? The Curse of Frankenstein.
It is.
It's like their
Yeah.
Frankenstein really looks like a stitched together blob of rotting tissue more than an actual person.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty gross.
I think it's more faithful to the book, really, when you, at least the monster part of it is.
Now, the depiction of Frankenstein, the scientists, is they make him out to be a real SOB in most of these movies. There's one movie called The Evil of Frankenstein where they make him sympathetic. But Peter Cushing generally played him as this truly amoral scientist, sort of more like Herbert West and Mary Shelley's Victor Frankenstein.
Sidebar, and then Kelly's watching, and he pointed out I want to ask about the 30s movies. But a little sidebar today, I guess New York Times Books put out an article. I haven't read it yet, but the headline, and a lot of people are upset about it. With Jules Verne and the publisher Hugo Gernsback, H.G. Wells invented the genre of science fiction. And people are pointing out that Mary Shelley did that quite a few years before. So, agree, disagree, or was that horror?
I mean, come on, who actually invents a genre?
Yeah.
The Industrial
Yeah, that's the first
Revolution
problem I have with
and
it.
the Industrial Revolution and science was just absolutely transforming the landscape. You know, Darwin wrote the Origin of Species like in 1863. You know, most of the great particle physics was being done around the turn of the century. Einstein was the early part of the 20th century. All this science was happening, and it was a common subject in the papers. And their idea of entertainment, a lot of times in, say, Mary Shelley's day, was they'll go to lectures. So someone will demonstrate mesmerism or galvanism or some other sensational scientific topic. You know, there's H.G. Wells. Yeah, sure. There's Robert Louis Stevenson. What would you say is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? Is that science fiction? I think everyone would acknowledge that Mary Shelley was a brilliant pioneer.
And wrote Frankenstein at the age of 18.
Yeah.
You know, but
yeah,
it's also worth remembering that genres are really a modern invention, mostly for marketing purposes in bookstores. I was thinking about it in terms of like the old weird fiction writers from like the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Now, it was what they're writing horror? Is it fantasy? Is it sci-fi? The answer is kind of yeah. It's all of those because they didn't know that those genres existed yet. They just cross all over the place because they're just writing interesting stories. I suspect Mary Shelley was just trying to win that competition that night and write the best scary story.
Yeah.
But I think it included all of those things, and she didn't know that she was crossing boundaries because they hadn't been drawn yet.
That's a good point. Well, let's talk about the 30s.
John,
I'm sorry, Andrew. Go ahead. You had something else.
No, the only thing is just the one last afterthought was genres are sometimes helpful, but they're also equally unhelpful. They can box people into something that they're really not.
Yeah, it's very true. They're helpful in the sense that you know which section, as a reader, you know which section of the bookstore to go and look in. If you're in the mood for horror or sci-fi or whatever, they can definitely box authors in. So let's talk about the 30s Hammer films. Guys, tell me about this.
Pretty much it was a lot of mysteries and thrillers until the 50s.
Okay.
You really don't know too much about Hammer in the 30s.
Okay, so the horror starts more in the 50s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Fact, I was thinking, when did they start? They may have started in the 40s. I think they popped up.
Yeah, they started right after World War II. Yeah.
All right. So
the first movie is 1935.
Oh, really?
What is it?
Yep.
What is it?
It is The Public Life of Henry the Ninth.
Oh, that's
that
great!
Sounds
wow.
mesmerizing.
Wait. We're gonna movie night.
What are we doing here?
We're doing The Secret Life of Henry the Ninth, or whatever the hell that was.
It says this is the only film of which no copies are known to exist.
Oh,
Sorry, Matt. You're saved.
It seems to be like a parody on The Private Life of Henry VIII, which was an American movie.
Yeah.
Because there is no Henry the Ninth.
The next one is Phantom Ship, 1935. There's a murderer at sea. Okay.
That sounds kind of horror-ish.
Yeah.
There may even
sort
be
of.
one with. There may even be a movie with Bela Lugosi based on the Mary Celeste or Marie Celeste, the ship that
Yeah, that is Bela Lugosi in that Phantom Ship.
Oh, that's based on the legend of the Mary Celeste.
Yeah, it doesn't say. It just says During a horrific storm at sea, the crew realizes that there is a murderer among them who is killing them off one by one.
Oh, I may be wrong. Maybe a totally different movie.
There's so many of them. I don't know. Like,
Well,
yeah.
as far as the monster movies and so forth, from each of you, maybe what are 2 or 3 of your very favorites? If you're talking to somebody and saying they're saying, I only have time to watch 2 or 3, what would you say? You have to watch these.
Horror of Dracula, absolutely.
Yeah, that may be the old time best Dracula movie, even though it's not. It captures the spirit of the book rather than the events.
I would third that. Definitely, Bella has the looks, but I think Christopher Lee is the better interpretation of Dracula, and it gets better too. I think he gets better. Second and the third one, where he becomes almost mute. I think in a couple of them he doesn't even speak.
Second one, it says nothing.
Yeah,
which was the last one?
His Dracula
I saw one.
Pure carnal. It's monstrous. He's predatory.
The last one I saw, he didn't speak, and I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah, it's an excellent trope, and it works really well because, of course, he's right. Why would you have a conversation with your cow before you make it into your hamburger? Dracula has no interest in us. Yeah, we are irrelevant to him. We are just food, and so this cultured, refined, talkative Dracula doesn't exist for Christopher Lee. And I think it's exactly right. It's so spot on.
It's funny because I recently reread Salem's Lot, and there's a scene where I forget the vampire's name.
Barlow.
Barlow. He's in the dump, I believe, talking to the guy who runs the dump or whatever, and he starts having a conversation with him, and I'm like, why is he even talking to this guy? He's an idiot. So. Yeah.
So I think just to comment on the lack of conversation. The reason why I had conversation in all the Hollywood movies we've been able to go see in John Carradine were because they weren't showing fangs. They weren't even showing. The camera was viewing away anytime some woman got bitten. So, in order to compensate for the lack of graphic violence, which you have in the Hammer films, they made Dracula more a seducer, who uses a spoken word.
There also wasn't any music in the 1931 Dracula. Besides the introduction, there wasn't any music throughout the film.
Right.
Well,
so he had to talk, in other words.
Yeah,
it would have been really boring to just stare at a blank screen with no music and dark. The dark shadows are cool, but still.
The first adaptation was also of the play rather than the novel, and the play, of course, has a lot more dialogue.
Well, I totally understand, but then again, in the novel, Dracula talks quite a bit.
In the first half.
That's true.
He talks a lot in the castle with Jonathan Harker. And then he rarely says, there are not that many scenes with dying. He has that famous line about, "You dare pit your intellect against me, I who have commanded nations." But he doesn't really talk much to Van Helsing.
All right, so moving on, what would be another movie you'd recommend, guys?
Captain Cronus.
I'm all for that.
It's a blast.
It's so fun. It's a swashbuckler. I personally think that's one of my favorite ones as far as female characters of Hammer, just because she really has some autonomy in that movie. Like, she decides to run away with the guy,
That was made by Brian, the director and writer of that was Brian Clemens, who did the Avengers TV series with Patrick McNee.
Now, just so this is like different than most other vampire movies in that the monsters are mostly off screen, and it focuses on the vampire hunter, like this dashing, good-looking guy, friends from the war, very competent. It's like he's tracking down the monster. The monster is sort of a bit part. which is very different than the other Dracula movies.
Mhm.
Also, it has the concept that not all vampires are the same.
Yeah.
Which was because I think the reason he got into that was they had done Dracula, and then they were making a series of movies about Carmilla from Sheridan Le Farnu's story. And being faithful to Sheridan Le Fanu, vampires walk in the sun. It was also in Dracula, by the way, vampires walk in the sun. It's only in the movies that sunlight is fatal to Dracula. But they said the way to reconcile that is say there are different species of vampires, and you even have a call out to Carmilla in the climax. When the vampire is exposed, it's a relative of Carmilla. Karlstein is the family name, or Karlstein as they pronounce it in the movie.
All right.
Camilla films are particularly interesting because the main protagonist, Camilla, is she's bisexual, which is not something that you see, I think, frequently in films until relatively recently. And I think that was, I feel like there were taboos that had to have been broken then. That's
well, in the
that's, I think
70s, in the 70s, you saw an outburst of same-sex vampire movies. They also had Daughters of Darkness.
It's
Mhm.
interesting
Belgian
too.
film.
That happened in the 70s, but it's interesting too. I remember, like you said before, Bridget, the Anne Rice novels,
Mhm.
people were clutching their pearls. And I remember seeing an
Clutching their
interview.
pearls is a great way to put it.
Yeah. I remember, Interview
Oh
with the
my
Vampire.
gosh.
Yeah. The movie came out in the 90s, mid 90s, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. And I remember, I think Tom Cruise was on Oprah or some such talking about the movie. And some of the audience was just aghast because they thought there were homosexual themes in the movie.
I mean,
No.
if you read Anne Rice's books, I mean, people are people, vampires are vampires. Like
Right.
gender doesn't mean anything to them, really.
Right.
But it is so funny that, decades later, after the lesbian vampire craze, that all of a sudden people are like, oh my gosh, vampires.
Yeah. Exactly.
Bisexual. Oh my goodness.
All right. Any others? I don't know the right questions to ask really, because I'm not the expert.
Yeah, there's two that one of them is one I think that a lot of people would mention as really high quality, which is The Devil Rides Out. I think.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
That's Hammer, right? I'm not remembering that wrong, right?
That's right. It's Hammer. It's based on a Dennis Wheatley novel.
Yeah, that's a really beautifully well done film about how there are Satanists out to get you. So be careful. They're out there. The other one, which I think doesn't get as much love, is Plague of the Zombies, which is about 2 years before Night of the Living Dead.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at that and you look at Night of the Living Dead, you can see that Romero or somebody who was working on that project had seen that before, because there are visuals and imagery and ways in which the zombies move that is clearly Romero's using that. Of course, what you don't have, what you have with Romero is the fabulous social and political commentary. So Night of the Living Dead is still a better movie, but Plague of the Zombies, I think, is overlooked and shouldn't be. It's kind of cool.
Same director did The Reptile.
Yeah,
I can't remember what his name is, because the majority of the movies are directed by Terrence Fisher.
Hmm.
He did all the Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing team-ups.
Yeah.
But there was another director whose name I gotta look up, who does very competent movies. He did a lot of historical adventure as well. And he did Plague of the Zombies and The Reptile.
John Gilling did Plague of the Zombies.
John Gilling.
Yeah.
Okay, now I made a list of some Hammer movies I really want to see, and you can tell me if these are worth looking at.
Cool.
I think I saw this ages ago, but I don't remember. It's called Twins of Evil.
Yes, watch it.
Yes.
A good one.
That's from 1971. Let Me In.
I can see all the audience grabbing their pencils right about now.
And just as a little point, if you listen to the theme music of that, It's very similar to the theme music of Justice League, the cartoon.
Huh.
I don't remember the cartoon to Justice League music that well. I'm gonna have to go listen to that now, Rick.
What about
Compare the two of them. I played them together.
I'll have to do that.
And see that. Dun, da, 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 da.
Yeah. Yeah.
what about Vampire Circus? That's another one I really want to see. I like shows about circuses and carnivals.
Yeah, I actually haven't watched that one. It's on my
I've
to watch
seen
list.
that one.
I liked it, but it's not one of their best vampire movies.
It has a couple of really kind of weird, dreamy sequences that are kind of like a fever dream.
Doesn't it have like ladies painted as animals? I mean, isn't that like reason enough?
Just go watch something wicked this way comes.
It has Lala Ward in it, who was the female from Gallifrey, the Doctor Who companion during the Tom Baker years. She's a very good actress. She plays a female vampire. It's like her first movie almost.
What about the Legend of Seven Golden Vampires?
Oh, that's a bad one.
Oh,
I could tell by the title.
That's exactly what caught my. Oh, Seven Golden Vampires. It's got to be good.
That's a co-production with Shaw Brothers, the Kung Fu movies, and
more vampires isn't always better, I guess.
I mean, you can tell at a certain point that the vampire thing in horror is starting to run out of steam, and they're starting to lose. I could not be able to come up with ideas anymore, and that's around the point where it starts becoming obvious.
Like if the ones that have problems are like the last two Christopher Lee ones, which are in modern day.
Yeah, the 1972 Dracula. Yeah.
Dracula 1970. I think it's Dracula AD 1972, and Satanic Rites of Dracula.
That one's pretty fun too.
I mean, there are some good things in them because they both have Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. And
well, is The Wicker Man a Hammer film?
Masterpiece.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, it's not.
It isn't.
Okay.
It isn't.
But it's a masterpiece, and you should watch it.
It is still worth
brilliant.
seeing anyway. Yeah.
It's a brilliant movie.
All right,
Absolutely.
Matt. I want to move on, but what else you got before we do?
Those were the ones that I was curious about.
Okay. Anything else before we move on, guys?
There are two interesting Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movies that they made. The one that's the best, the first one has its flaws, but it had an interesting concept. That was the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, which had Hyde as a handsome guy and Jekyll as this ugly guy with a beard. So it had a pretty decent script as far as dialogue was concerned. Christopher Lee has a supporting role in it. I think Paul Massey was the guy who played Jekyll and Hyde.
So he looked foul, but he felt fair, in other words.
Yeah, it's sort of I'll say, I don't think it works ultimately, but it had its moments. It's sort of an interesting failure. The better one, the one that's really fun, is Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde. There's Hyde turning into a woman, and ties in Jack the Ripper as well into the plot and everything. That starred Ralph Bates with an actor who they were trying to groom to be the replacement for Liam Cushing, but it didn't work out, even though he was very talented. And it stars, and the female Hyde is played by Martine Beswick, who you may remember from Russia With Love and Thunderball.
Bill, were you going to say something?
The main contribution I can make to this is that I'm a little bit of an expert in public domain materials, and several of the Hammer 4 films like Quatermass and I think Satanic Rites of Dracula are in the public domain.
Yes.
So that just shows you how these films had fallen out of grace and how these companies didn't think they were worthy enough to be able to renew the copyrights on in the 70s. So, and some of them in the 80s and 90s. So they just fell out of favor. And, here we are talking about them because they're some of the best films ever made.
I also like Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed. This is a different Peter Cushing kind of Frankenstein. The formula for the Frankenstein movies is that usually about half of the movie is Frankenstein making the monster, and the second half is the monster going on a rampage. And generally, the monsters aren't as interesting as the scientist. This one, it really isn't. It involves brain exchange experiments. You have sort of a monster, but it's almost like a detective thriller. It's Frankenstein committing all these crimes and being tracked by the police, and I thought it worked very well.
Matt, did you want to argue with somebody about Wheel of Time?
Sure. I can. I
want to argue with somebody about it. That's hilarious.
Well, sure. I mean, so first of all, this has no more to do with Lovecraft or weird fiction or horror than all of the Batman nonsense we talk about.
Nonsense. You're fired.
Okay. So The Wheel of Time is a series by a guy named Robert Jordan. That was a pseudonym. It started in 1990, which is when I started reading it. And it was one of the very first big fantasy series that sparked a huge online fandom discussion. And this was on the Usenet groups. Alt.horror.cthulhu was there. And this was like there's a special discussion board for Robert Jordan's fiction. And certainly for the first half of the series, intense, scorching discussions about all the cool little things that he hid in his books, all the foreshadowing and referring back, references to the modern day in his books. It has been mentioned that, is this a ripoff of The Lord of the Rings? No, it's actually completely dissimilar. But when he wrote it, of course, everything was Lord of the Rings. This was like coming out in 1990. And you wanted to get your foot in the door, you'd write a trilogy. There'd be a dwarf, some evil overlord. So he sort of deliberately set up some things that nodded to Tolkien so people could sort of comfortably set themselves into his world while he went in a completely different direction. For example, one of the places they stay was like the Inn of the Nine Rings. That was just a direct nod to Tolkien. But at any rate, in my opinion, the series, he started to try and game the fandom, I think, to a degree. I don't know if this is true. That's my impression. Like they would guess something that a book was leading up to, and so he'd try and do something different. But it just kept going and going and going.
So he was reading all these and then
I think, never met the guy, but for example, the first 4 books I thought were superb. I read them like I was in my early 30s, I think. And I'd always read the series all the way up when the new book was coming out. But by the 5th book, it was starting to get some bloat. And the 6th book had real problems, just a great ending. And it's like, I thought it jumped the shark at book 7. Too many characters, too sprawling, plot threads lost. All the characters seem the same.
How does the TV series compare?
Well, that's the thing. Okay, so another thing that he liked to do was, this was in a matriarchal society. So unlike most fantasy at the time, the women held the power and influence in society. These were magic using women called the Aes Sedai. That means servants of all. And so that was just very striking. And the men who could use magic all go insane and become destructive, so they have to be contained. And that's what the women devote themselves to doing. Well, I finished the series, but I wasn't thrilled with the ending. But now Amazon, seeing this huge, juicy fandom sitting there, has started a new series, The Wheel of Time. And the first 3 episodes have been released. So of course, I couldn't resist. So first of all, it stars Rosamund Pike, and she's a marvelous actress. She plays one of the very major characters. They have changed some things around. Like one character, Perrin Ibarra, his story arc is drastically changed. I'm not convinced for the better. some people have been dropped or moved around. That's probably no loss. They've made a tremendous effort to have a very diverse cast, which is nice for a fantasy series for a change, you know. But my issue is, and I'd be interested to hear what anyone else thought, is as much as I'm predisposed to enjoy it, first of all, if I didn't know the plot so well, I'd be a bit confused. I wouldn't really follow what was going on. And the second thing is, it's not that interesting. It's like I'm watching it and I'm thinking,
I'm picturing
gosh.
DeBronzo throwing the computer monitor right now watching this.
Well, the thing,
Weren't you and him arguing about it?
No, Ben Handelman would be throwing.
Oh, Ben. Yeah, okay.
You know, well, the best part about it, again, is the matriarchal nature of the society. Because it's very striking that the women who use magic, they know they're badass, they know they're important, and they expect to be deferred to. And there's some scenes where you see them interacting with people, and the way that they're in some ways very imperious. It's a very different feel, but I hope it picks up in terms of the jazziness of the script.
You're really talking me out of this.
Well,
I watch those, and one of the things I try to do is figure out why things don't work. And the first half of the first episode, I just couldn't get into. And I think fundamentally it's a casting issue. These four characters that they're building it around, it feels sort of like a YA novel. Each one of them is sort of a stereotypical, that fits into a slot. And as the actors themselves are just really not that interesting. There was really only one of the characters that I found interesting. He's sort of a rake and a guy with a gambling problem. But
that guy is a fan favorite in the books. All of these characters have interesting arcs and do interesting things. They're very different. It's not YA at all, but the way that they're presenting it.
Yeah,
that's how it felt to me. It felt like a sort of a mediocre YA book, and there's certain really good things in it. There's really great creature effects, the magic atmosphere there, and what they're doing with that is interesting. But fundamentally, if you don't care about the characters, you don't care about the show, and that's kind of where I'm at.
Very true.
That's
all right. You guys have talked me out of it.
It only picked up for me when they had the raid on the town by the troll-like creatures.
Right.
Andrew, have you seen it?
No, I haven't. Now I'm worried that maybe I'm not.
I never will now.
I've been reading the Wheel of Time books over the last couple of years. I'm on book 8 right now. Matt, you're disappointing me by telling me that the ending is not worth getting to. Part of because there's 13 of them and they're all like 1,000 pages. I mean, like,
that's his job here, Andrew.
Well, see, first of all, Robert Jordan died. Okay, so they got Brian Sanderson to finish it. He had extensive notes.
How it got done.
He got extensive notes. Like I think Robert Jordan had mesothelioma. He left extensive notes. He had written certain scenes completely, like the final scene in the book he wrote himself.
Yeah, dying is not an excuse not to finish.
He also had given, his wife was his editor, and she knew the characters intimately. So they had a lot of material for Sanderson to work on.
All right.
Yeah, and I have to say that it's an incredible effort at world building, and often when you have something that is that rich and detailed, it's very hard to translate it into something audiovisual. You can't throw everything in which the fan base wants because it gets too confusing in that particular medium. And if you take a bunch of it out, you tick off the people who are guaranteed to show up. It's sort of like what happened with the Dark Tower. You end up hobbling the best parts of it, but putting all that stuff in it is too much for the average person who isn't familiar with the world to sit through.
Well, they wanted it to be the answer to Game of Thrones, and it is so not that. It's not going to have that sort of impact on any level.
I do tell you that the scene at the end of the third episode where Moraine runs into Leandrin Sade and the women who have captured Logain, the male magician channeler. I really like that because you could just, like I said, the very impressive matriarchal nature of it was so different than most of the fantasy in film.
They're great locations. There's great costumes. The effects are really dead on. But fundamentally, I just don't care about those four characters. And I think that's the crux.
Yeah, and I realized that was my problem with it. I didn't care about the four people.
Well, let's move on to HELLBOUND, because you guys made me aware of this just yesterday. So what is it? And it sounded like it really interested you, Bridget, and everybody else, really.
Yeah. So it's just that it just got released yesterday, but
It's a Netflix series, right?
yes, and
Okay.
it's a Korean horror series. So, Netflix naturally, after the huge success of Squid Game, is like, sure, let's put up another Korean horror series on here. But this is horrifying. I mean,
what way?
I thought Squid Game was pretty brutal, but this is wow. And I'm still captivated. I still want to see what happens. But after watching the first 3 episodes, and it's only a 6-episode season, I watched 3 episodes and I'm like, okay, I need a soul break from watching this for just a little while.
Without spoilers, in what way is it horrifying? Because I know nothing about
Yeah.
this.
So the premise, and this isn't really a spoiler because they tell you it in the first few minutes of the episode.
All right.
So it takes place, I want to say, a year or 2 from now, because when the first thing happened in 2022 gets mentioned, I think, but I think it's around 2024 that everything happens. And basically the premise is that certain people are visited by what would be considered an angel, I guess. They say, what was the phrase that they used? People get a oh, now I'm forgetting it, but they use a certain phrase for when this angel shows up and says, basically, you're going to die at this time on this date and you're bound for hell.
So these are the Old Testament angels.
Yeah, they are not nice. It's like a horrifying face shows up out of nowhere and says, you're going to die at this time.
Oh man, I'm going to watch this tonight. You think Danielle would like this, right?
And you're going to hell. And so what's horrifying about it is, one, I mean, the first episode opens with these teenagers in a coffee shop just talking about, oh, have you heard about this? Like, oh yeah, I've seen some videos online. I don't know if it's true. Oh, that's just crap. Do you believe that? Natural conversations that people would have if some random thing was happening in the world, and it was even, there's a video online, people aren't necessarily going to believe it. And then all of a sudden you see this guy getting chased down by these, I don't know what you would call them, demons, whatever, to collect him.
Hellhounds.
Yeah, but they're kind of like hell gorillas. They're really cool creature design, first of all, and they are just horrible to the person that they're grabbing and supposedly taking to hell.
Oh
so
shit. Bridget,
it's
Danielle
terrifying.
must be watching. Danielle must be watching because she just texted me, I am not afraid to hurt you.
Oh no.
So wait, so like, did you see the Japanese series? Like we showed it on movie night, I think. Alice in Borderland.
No, I didn't watch that one.
I think it's similarly brutal. These people are like taken out of real Tokyo and put into games where they all get their heads blown off and stuff. I've never seen Squid Game. It sounds
that's kind of like that, but this isn't a game at all. This is like a worldwide religious crisis.
Okay, but see, I'm watching another horrifying Korean show. I bet you're not watching. Hotel de Luna.
I'm not watching that.
Okay, so this really incredibly young and cute Korean lady is in charge of this hotel for ghosts who are transitioning to the next life, and
already bored.
She makes her underlings miserable with all of her shopping and demands, and there's some really cute Korean guy she wants to be her assistant, so she makes him become her assistant.
And you're actually watching this?
Oh yeah.
It sounds like the Korean
It's-
version of
it's-
the British version of Ghosts.
It's like it's like almost like a Hallmark movie, except you know, a
I
lot
can
of-
see it now.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
going to do a Korean desperate or
with like
Korean
K-pop.
Real Housewives, and Matt will be watching it.
Hellbound is not a Hallmark.
Well, but see, some of these people are going
I
down;
see.
they aren't going up. You know, it's sort of similar.
Oh my gosh. No, what is terrifying about this show is not just the premise, whether you're religious or not. It's just the way it's presented is terrifying. But what is really terrifying about it is the way society reacts to the crisis. So you've got these different zealotous groups that form vigilante groups, people, they're getting together and putting people online, and they're watching it when they know somebody's going to get collected, and just all the like social commentary that goes along with this is really
this is with the
terrifying.
hope that they're going to convert people. Is that right? Or just
Yes.
enjoy the wrath of God, or both?
Or are they selling tickets?
They're more like wanting to prove to the world that God's wrath is real. But then there's other factions that think that they just want to take it upon themselves to help with that cause, whether they're right or wrong.
Oh, ouch. God. You have to
There's
scrub out the inside of your head after you watch an episode.
there's a character that's doing like online talking who's kind of an anonymous sort of character, I guess you'd say. And so what's really captivating about it for me, besides all that horrifying topic, is just how well they integrate the technology and our modern culture and social media and everything into the crisis. It's pretty well done, I would say.
All
But
right.
yeah, I need a soul break before I watch the other 3 episodes, and then I'll let you know.
All right. So, The Veil of Night, we've all seen this, right? Came out about a year and a half ago. The Vast of Night, excuse me.
Oh, yeah.
The Vast of Night.
Oh yeah.
Here's
So
my question.
I got a question about that too, Mike, when you're done with yours.
All right, my question is, rewatching this, you don't really, it's easy for your mind to jump to little green men and a UFO up there, but it really never says. And it one character says, free will isn't possible with them around, they control everything. And it just strikes me as, I'm not one to label every, horror movie as Lovecraftian, but that strikes me as cosmic horror, really. You have no control. The humans have no control, and they don't even know what this thing is. What do you guys
That's
think?
totally how I saw that movie. That's
All right.
100%. Like classic weird fiction. It's something huge and ominous and terrifying and very different than us. And
you can never win.
And you can never win. There's zero hope whatsoever.
Yeah.
But you still have to deal with life in the midst of that.
So here, like, this is my question.
Okay.
So like, first of all, I don't know why the main character, why she went and grabbed her baby sister to get in the car with them. That made no sense to me. But like when she and the other radio guy and the baby are in this field and the light is on them, so there's this UFO or wherever it is above them, and we're assumed they're going to be abducted, right? And when you flash back to the field, there's that like recorder in a pile of ash. And now I'm kind of wondering, were they just incinerated?
I wasn't wondering at all. I figured
I
they
thought
were.
they had been like abducted like by aliens, but then I thought, oh my
Well,
gosh.
like I said, it's easier for your mind to jump to that.
Maybe they
doesn't have
shed
to
their
do that at
mortal
all.
coil.
Right.
Yeah, maybe they were raptured. We don't know. But yeah, it just struck me as rewatching it as very much cosmic horror. And I think I even said this the last time we talked about Vast of Night, but I got to say it again. 2 things. Number one, the cinematography is just incredible. That scene across town, for example, where the camera just without a cut goes all the way across town.
That long shot. Yeah,
Yes.
that's I'm always impressed by directors who can pull those off.
It was
They're so
amazing.
cool.
The
Mhm.
the other thing that was really, really impressive to me was no special effects, but with just an old lady in a house reading a language, how unsettling it was.
Very creepy.
When we first hear her saying this, I became extremely unsettled. They really, really, I don't know how they did this, but they really did it right. And then the characters remark about, what were you saying? That was really, yeah, I don't know what word he used, but something along those lines. So it's a really impressive film.
I thought it was a really intelligent script, and it was super well acted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And watching it more than once, I got more out of it, and I really enjoyed it. It's definitely one that's worth watching again and again.
So
Yeah.
what do you think happened at the end?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't want to know.
I think it's like
They're
the
just
end of
gone.
the thing. We're not meant to know. It's
Mhm.
you know, it's ambiguous.
I think it adds to the unsettling quality that you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. All right. So yeah, so I should add the Vast of Night to Lovecraftian movies, cosmic horror movies section on the site. Yeah. Matt,
Pardon me?
did you have something?
No.
All right.
If you want, I can sing, but
No, that's okay. Really. Stairway to Heaven. That's my request. I just read this. This Thing Between Us is the title of the book by Gus Marino. And it's incredible. It's a very creepy book. It's in print, Kindle, and on Audible, and it's read real well on Audible too. Again, it's This Thing Between Us by Gus Marino. I'll just read a little bit of the synopsis. Ever since Vera and Thiago bought the Itza, this is like an Alexa. Life has gotten strange. The ads for the world's most advanced smart speaker didn't mention scratching in the walls, eerie music in the dead of night, or peculiar packages. It's weird but amusing right up until Vera is killed and Thiago's world becomes unbearable. The only thing left to do is to get as far away from Chicago as possible, but Thiago soon realizes there is no escape. Not from his guilt, not from his anger, and not from the evil hunting him. Feeding on his pain, looking for a way into this world. And don't take my word for it. Paul read it, Stephen Graham Jones read it, John Langan read it, and they all loved it too. So yeah, pick it up. So Gus sent me a copy, so I'm going to email him back and maybe get him on sometime in the next little bit here. So I wanted to plug that. What do you guys have watched lately that you would want to recommend besides Hellbound?
Well, we just watched The Halo on movie night.
Right.
It was well worth watching. I mean, I had some issues with like when people carry their baby next to a rotting deer. I kind of get pissed off, like, you stupid parent. But it was actually a really good creature feature is how I ended up thinking about it.
I watched it several years ago. I remember I really liking it.
Very unsettling. So
yeah.
Some things that aren't recent, but there was a show on Netflix called Prospect. It was science fiction, really low budget, stripped down sci-fi. Did anybody watch that? But that was really good.
Yeah, tell us about what's the premise.
Basically, there's these people that are prospecting on this planet. This guy and his daughter, and the air's not breathable on there, and they run into these other shady characters, and it's really stripped down sci-fi. There's no big effects, there's none of that stuff, and it just really works well to be a film that it's the sort of thing that you will completely slip past you. The suits that they wear look like diving suits, are just all, just rough and rugged. And it's just an interesting film that's definitely worth your time. I'm not sure if it's still on Netflix. I watched it quite a while back. It's just called Prospect, and it's just top notch.
Did you say it was a TV series or a movie?
No, it's a movie.
Okay.
It's a movie. It's about a 90-minute. And we were talking about The Old Ways on Thursday. That's a good one from that. It's a 1 location, 4-actor film. And when you make a film, the thing that causes the budget to be higher is time. And every time you move the camera, you lose 2 hours because you got to relight. And so when you do a one location film, it's really, really hard to make those interesting. And they pull that off really well. You don't even realize it's a 1 location film until you start thinking about it after the fact.
Yeah, that's The Old Ways, and it does look interesting. I want to watch that.
About Prospect, I couldn't find it on Netflix. I wonder if it's moved on.
It might have moved on. It was about almost 2 years ago that it was on. But it's worth hunting down. And
it's on Hulu, guys.
No.
So The Old Ways is a future movie night flick.
I just looked up. Prospect is on Hulu at the moment.
Okay.
So.
And Always, they do just a little bit of makeup. There's an old woman they do a really nice makeup treatment on, and they're able to get so much out of their budget on that film.
I wanted public service announcement. Right now, Stephen King's book, The Stand, is only $1.99 on Kindle. I don't know how long that's going to last. So, that's a thick book for $2.
Here's another minor PSA. I think it's still available. If you are a card-carrying member of the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society, they have their annual Eldritch Elf gift exchange. And you sign up, they will send you someone's name randomly, and you buy them a gift, and then someone buys you a gift. It's like a Pollyanna.
That's cool.
You can specify if it should be someone in the U.S., someone in North America versus anywhere in the world. And sometimes you get some neat stuff, and sometimes you don't. But if you want to do it, go join the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society. I don't think it costs anything. And ask about their Eldritch Elf, because I don't know when it ends.
Just your soul, I think that's all. That's all it costs. All right, so Andrew watches a lot of movies, right? Horror movies. So
yeah.
So I wanted to ask you what you've watched, in the last maybe month or two, whatever you want to mention that you want to recommend to the audience.
You're asking about really good movies, and from a sort of Lovecraftian perspective, In the Earth is one that I would highly recommend. It's a new one released this year. It's on Hulu. And it reminded me a lot of the kind of stuff Algernon Blackwood used to write back in the day. For folks who don't know, who are listening, H.P. Lovecraft reminded us that the sea was out to kill us, and Algernon Blackwood, who was writing shortly around the same time, he wanted you to know that the woods are out to kill you. And it's a really interesting story. It's no frills. It takes place in a time when there's some kind of pandemic, so it's topical. And it's about researchers who are going out into the woods to research a section of the forest where I can't remember what it's called, where the fungus roots grow interconnected in large fields. It's about one of those where you can get a single living organism that's fungal that can go on sometimes for square miles at a time.
That's like the humongous fungus. They have the
humongous fungus.
Yeah, they have that humongous fungus festival in Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's one of those, exactly. And basically, it's filled with madness and murder and you not knowing quite where you're at and a lot of existential dread. So it's good stuff.
Let me just
that's
briefly...
on my list too for movie night.
Okay,
it was really, really good.
No, I'm sorry, Andrew. I just want what you just said about the woods, Lovecraft in the woods and Algernon Blackwood, Lovecraft with the sea and Algernon Blackwood with the woods. I just picked up a sample. I haven't bought it yet, but it looks really good. It's a book called Where All Is Night and Starless by John Linwood Grant. And here's something that someone wrote about the author in this book. And I highlighted it just today. The vast unknown is far away and significantly less compelling than the strange creatures of legend who occupy the woods just outside of town. So it's funny that I highlighted that today, and then what you said just reminded me of that. So In the Earth, what else do you want to recommend?
That's the one, like when we're talking about things that have a sort of Lovecraftian flavor, that was the one that jumps out immediately to me recently.
It doesn't have to, any fan of Lovecraftian horror is a fan of horror,
Yeah. I rewatched all the Halloweens recently in preparation for watching Halloween Kills, and which I am surprised. I find that most people were kind of meh about Halloween Kills. I actually loved the hell out of it. I thought it was great.
Really?
I'm always fascinated by how people can see the same piece of art and experience it in very different ways. I'm constantly fascinated by that. Whenever I see a film I love and someone else hates, my first question is, okay, what did I miss? What was it that made the film suck that I wasn't seeing? And vice versa. If a film I don't like, it's the first question I ask is, what is it that I missed? What was great about the film that I should have been paying attention to? I'm endlessly fascinated by that.
It might have to do with a couple of other things too. Expectations of the movie, like if in the example of Halloween Kills, if they expect it to be one thing and it's not quite what they expected or wanted, but that's arbitrary, so yeah, it's fascinating. So
I find horror is also very personal too. Things that freak out one of us don't freak out others, and sometimes it has to do with that. For instance, serial killers don't really frighten me because they don't really happen a lot, and I sometimes convince myself that if somehow someone was trying to kill me, I might be able to defend myself okay. But a ghost, that terrifies me because you can't kill a ghost. So that's we all have our own little things that like freak us out.
Right. Yeah. Anything else? I follow your Twitter feed, and you recommend a lot of different things. So
yeah, I post almost everything that I watch. Lately, I've been going through a real phase of watching utterly atrociously awful films for fun.
I'm sad Pete's not here.
I watched the new film 2021, The Resort. It is god awful and a lot of fun because of it. Oh gosh, so many different things. The Dark Lurking, which is a gem that I didn't even know about from about 10 years ago. Also just god awful. Have any of you guys ever seen the movie Abraxas with what's the name of the guy who became governor of Wisconsin, the wrestler?
Jesse Ventura.
Yeah.
Jesse Ventura.
Jesse Ventura stars in this, and you might be surprised to find out that he is not capable of carrying a movie by himself.
Okay, what I remember is when he was governor, the people of Minnesota, people were wearing these T-shirts that said, "My governor can kick your governor's ass." So he did. I
don't doubt that. I really don't.
He did have redeemable points, So.
But the movie acting was not one of his major skills.
Our friend Rich Bunting, I think it was Rich, that mentioned a couple days ago that there wasn't a lot of Wendigo movies out there, or hardly any.
There are not, and there should be, because there's a new one.
Go ahead.
There's a new one that just came out.
Yeah, it's funny that I stumbled on these two. This is from 2017. It's called Devil in the Dark. So I'm going to watch this. I haven't watched it yet. Two estranged brothers find themselves stalked by a terrifying unknown presence while on a weekend hunting trip in remote British Columbia. And I'm pretty sure this is a Wendigo movie, not having seen it. And then the other one is, maybe this is what you're talking about, Andrew. This is a Joe Blow, excuse me, a Joe Blow article. Don't say its name. Is that what you were thinking of?
Maybe.
The headline is "Don't Say Its Name" clip builds up to a Wendigo attack. So looks like it's releasing in Canada only a few days ago. So, and I looked it up. I don't find in America. I can't find anywhere to stream it, at least right now. So it looks promising also. But
What was the other name of the movie, Mike? The one before that you had mentioned?
It was, sorry, let me go back. Devil in the Dark. And that is streaming somewhere. I forget where, but that's 2017 movie.
Just adding them to my movie night list for
possible. It's just something really fascinating about, Wendigo stories for me. I don't know why. Maybe it's the snow, or I don't know. There should be more Wendigo movies, right, Andrew?
I 100% agree. And then that tracks back to Algernon Blackwood, who wrote one of the best Wendigo stories ever.
For those of you who really get bored, speaking of boring, you can listen to me. The 30 plus minutes with H.P. Lovecraft podcast interviewed me a couple of weeks ago, and the interview is up. So I've got the link in the show notes if you want to listen to me babble on even more than I do here. So really nice guys. It was nice of them to ask me on. And then this is really interesting. Have you guys heard of the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows? It's this guy. Yeah, this guy's been running. Let me just read you the synopsis of the book. It's been a website for a long time, and this guy basically makes up words for emotions that we don't have a word for, which sounds kind of stupid, but it's really, really actually very moving. So here's the Amazon synopsis. The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows poetically defines emotions that we all feel, but don't have the words to express until now. Have you ever wondered about the lives of each person you pass on the street, realizing that everyone is the main character in their own story, each living a life as vivid and complex as your own, and you're just a passerby in their story? That feeling has a name now: Sonder. Sonder. Or maybe you've watched a thunderstorm roll in and felt a primal hunger for disaster, hoping it would shake up your life. That's called lacacism. So it's just a really beautiful book, at least from what I can tell. I'm hoping I get it for Christmas, if my wife is still watching the podcast. So not horror related, but I feel like related to some of the things we talk about. So the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows by John Koenig, Koenig, and it's available actually on Audible as well as Kindle and print. So
you folks watched Old Gods of Apple or listened to Old Gods of Appalachia, the podcast?
I do.
Oh,
I don't think so.
I mean, I grew up in deepest, darkest Appalachia, and I think it's really well made. It's they're making Appalachia cool, and it's really, really good.
Is it a fiction podcast?
What do you like
Yes,
about it?
Mhm.
yes. The first season's really good. They tend to tie the stories more together in the first season. In the second season, they tend to be sort of more one-off stories, but it's really well done. It's pretty much a one narrator for most of the first season and all of the first season and most of the second season. But it's all free. There's higher level stuff on Patreon. But if you like Lovecraft and you want to, like my first book, More Than Evil, set in Appalachian, a lot of my books will be because it's in my blood. But it makes Appalachia cool, and it's got that whole a lot of Lovecraft, underpinnings in it. So it's.
And did you say
awesome.
also like a lot of Blackwood feel to it?
I would say that it does. I would say
Okay.
that it does for sure. But it's just really well done, and it's nice to see something set in that part of America that's positive. It's a very positive take on Appalachia, although there's all the horrors basically are underpinned it all. But it's just really well done, and if you're interested in Lovecraft, it's right there.
Rick, you want to recommend anything? I also wanted to ask you about Eternals.
Okay.
I've not heard good things.
I liked it.
Oh,
I liked it, but before that, since we're mentioning Hammer movies, there was a movie that came out, I think, around 2015 called Victor Frankenstein with James McAvoy.
Yeah.
As Frankenstein.
And Daniel Radcliffe.
Daniel Radcliffe played Igor. It's done in the style of the Hammer movies. The focus is on the scientist. And if you like the Hammer Frankenstein series, you'll like this movie.
What was the name of it again?
Victor Frankenstein. It's on Hulu.
Okay, great.
Now, the Eternals, I liked it overall. If I have a problem with it, my main problem was a villain named Crow, who I thought wasn't used that well. But I thought the final battle did work overall. And it's a different sort of Marvel movie. It has elements of 2001: A Space Odyssey and 5 Million Years to Earth. And it just has a different feel to it. You don't really get a truly human perspective in it, because almost it's all entirely the superpowered beings. I mean, the only real human in it is the Black Knight, or the character who will become the Black Knight in the later Marvel movie. And you don't get enough of him in the movie. But it's a good movie. I enjoyed it, but it's not one of the best Marvel movies. I'll put it that way.
Unfortunately, only in theaters right now, but I'll watch it when it goes streaming.
Yeah, this is something you can wait. I wouldn't be in a hurry to catch it.
I enjoyed it. But I agree with you, Rick. It's very different. It has a very different feel. Me personally, I kind of enjoyed that aspect of it. I enjoyed that we weren't waiting to find out what was going on. It was different to have it be all about the aliens and the celestials and that whole other layer.
You guys are really piquing my interest.
So did you see it in the theater?
Yeah, we went and saw it in the IMAX. Luckily, it wasn't too crowded.
I would have liked them to have given some better voices to the Celestial who talks. That was, Pete said Celestials should never talk. I said, no, but if you're going to have a godlike alien talk, let's get some voice that doesn't sound like it came from a sound stage.
Yeah.
Oh, I have an issue with that anyways. Whenever they have like someone communicating with Cthulhu in a book, and Cthulhu sounds like, they're a middle schooler plotting against their rival. It's like, oh, come on.
All right. So we got Thanksgiving coming up, so we got some extra time to watch movies. Anybody have any more recommendations? TV series, books, movies?
I mean, not a few.
Yeah, Bill and then Bridget.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say something that's not really a recommendation, but Matt was talking about voices, and I ended up watching the Lord of the Rings with normal voices on YouTube, and so what you said reminded me of that because it was just funny. They're like, "Yeah, man, we need to get the hobbits."
Oh
Haven't
yeah,
heard
so
of this.
it's like orcs with regular voices.
Yes,
Hey, find the halflings, guys.
exactly. And then like all the guys in the background and all the orcs going, "Oh," is the best part.
Oh, I gotta watch this.
Anyway, sorry, Bill. Go on.
Just a few. Norseman on Netflix. It's this really droll humor. It's basically a bunch of Vikings, and they're talking about social norms in that were common to the Vikings. But it is hilarious. It's you don't think it's going to be. It's very droll. One of the characters, he comes back from a raid and he doesn't have a family, and so he calls out one of the other villagers and kills him and gets to have his family and his wife and his land and all that stuff. And it's just and these are real, Viking rules, and it's just it just spoofs all that stuff in such a really, really interesting way. And it just they do it straight is what makes it funny, is everything's done just as straight as it can be.
That's
And one of the Vikings, he can't get off because the only way he's ever done it is through rape and pillage and all this kind of stuff. And so it just spoofs so many of these things that were actual, the societal rules of the Vikings. It's just, if you want something that's just kind of funny, that's a break, but it's still sort of a genre-ish. It's just a hoot.
Okay.
Let me Midnight Mass. I'm sure everybody on here seen Midnight Mass. Evil, which was a CBS series, had each episode was about a priest and this woman who was an unbeliever, and it just only got one season, and it was on Netflix for a while. I'm not sure if it still is, but each one of the episodes was really, really well and dealt with different aspects of evil.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring it up
Actually,
because these guys
like
have
that,
been
yeah.
these guys have been telling me about it for like a year now. So I finally watched the first one the other night, and I gotta agree, it's really good.
The second season is been posted.
Is there going to be a second season?
The second season's there entirely. It's been there for about they streamed it over four
Yeah, I thought there was 2
months or
seasons.
so.
It's
Have you all
on,
seen Don't F with Cats? That's a really interesting documentary story about these people that did some just heinous things, and the online community basically tracked them down. And just a really, really interesting.
This one thing in Evil, you have to get the second season's on Paramount.
Yeah, and I have to say, the one episode that I've seen so far, I'm glad you guys talked me into this. My favorite moment is, how can I put this without spoilers, is when the female protagonist is laying in bed and she's staring into the dark, and then something slowly happens. If you remember that, keyword George. I love it when, moments in a story, books or movies, where like there's this dark patch or something, and you keep looking at it and you think, the protagonist keeps looking at it and think, is there something there? And then slowly reveals that there is something there. So I love that woman in the first episode.
And it's not a big budget, but still works really, really well.
Yeah. Matt,
the scariest scene in the second season is in an elevator.
Okay.
That's all I want to say. There's an episode called The Elevator, so it's in that episode.
All right.
The Defeated, it's a post-World War II, the Reconstruction Nazi Germany, and it starts out, you just think it's another World War II thing, but it begins to have, I don't want to spoil, but it's just worth it, because it does a little bit of a turn, and it has a whole new sort of horror-ish aspect to it that really elevates it. It's I don't know, it's eight or 10 episodes. It's really good.
Have you guys seen, man, I can't think of it. It's like a World War II movie, and it's like zombies or something.
Are you talking about Overlord?
Yes, that's the title.
Yeah.
You guys seen that?
Yeah.
It's basically a video game.
Great fun.
I mean,
really?
any movie has a trailer that plays Hell's Bells, you automatically have to see the movie.
It's a great popcorn flick.
It really is, especially for people who are cosmic horror Lovecraft type nerds. It's perfect popcorn film.
There's a similar movie called Frankenstein's Army, which involves Russian soldiers finding the same sort of experiments going on.
When they're in the plane, and all of a sudden, shit gets real. Oh man, that's some damn good. That's a good movie. I liked it. So,
I can't remember who the director is of that, but it's somebody you wouldn't expect to do something sort of schlocky like that, but it really comes together.
Did we ever end up talking about Blood Red Sky?
We talked about that. We were going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Something like that.
So if you want to bring it up to talk about what we will talk about when we talk about it later,
Okay.
talk about it.
We're gonna need to do we have a motion?
I
to
said
talk
a
about
motion to.
Right. Seconded. You can talk about it.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the cooler movies that I've seen this year. Just vampires on a plane, sort of like
Sharknado.
No.
Is it as good as Snakes on a Plane?
It's like Die Hard and vampires on a plane. I don't know. I thought it was
Snakes
cool.
on a plane, but with vampires.
Yes, it's like Snakes on a Plane and Die Hard 2 with vampires. I don't know. I thought it was cool take.
Blood Red Sky 2 will be the same, but
in Yakatomi Plaza.
The Sharknado theme. So they've got the vampires in the plane and the sharks outside the plane. So they're really screwed.
I'll take the counterpoint. I felt like I had seen everything that they showed me. That I thought it looked really cool, but I just felt like you're not showing me anything I haven't seen already. That's just how I felt about it.
The thing that I liked it once. I wouldn't watch it twice. But the thing that it showed me that I don't remember seeing is that sympathetic of a vampire character. So I think it's even obvious from the trailers who that character is.
Yeah.
But
is that on Netflix?
Yes,
I think so. Yeah.
yes.
So, all right. Anything else from anybody?
Let me ask you, have you all seen, and people are very divided about this film, it's Antichrist, that's Lars von Trier.
I don't think I've seen it. No.
Sorry, who is it about?
It's by Lars von Trier. Lars von Trier, he really does either really great films or really horrible films that you can't bear to watch. But Antichrist, it's basically two people in that are it's man and wife, and their baby dies, and they sort of turn on each other. And Willem Dafoe's in it. It is.
Well, he's always great.
Yeah, people either love this movie or hate this movie, and it's English speaking, so you don't have to worry about subtitles or any of that stuff. But it has some just truly brutal stuff, and it's so realistic. It's not, it's not a horror film. It's a relationship film that is horrifying, and I can't guarantee that you'll like it because, like I said, a lot of people love it and a lot of people hate it. But it is one of those films that just haunts me.
That's a good recommendation. I'm going to have to. It's called Antichrist.
Antichrist, and it has nothing to do. There's nothing religious about it. It has nothing to do with that. I have no idea even why that's the title of it. But it is one of those films that stays with you.
Andrew, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to just looking for recommendations. Things as things get colder, I start thinking about horror that takes place in cold places.
Right.
Like The Thing and stuff like that.
And Wendigo.
One of the ones that, Wendigo, right? That kind of, I guess it's on my brain. One of the things I would recommend is The Terror, both the miniseries as well as the book by Dan Simmons. Both are fabulous. It's based on a actual event of a an exploration looking for a Northwest Passage that got stuck in the ice, and then they were never heard from again. Historically, we don't actually know what happened to them. Dan Simmons makes up the story about what happened to them based on a little bit of evidence. But it's fascinating to see a boat full of mostly men stuck in an ice floe for month after month, and how they slowly psychologically cannibalize each other as a community. And there is maybe an evil presence that might be there. It might not be. You don't know. But even if it's not there, it's there in their minds, and it's destroying them in that way. And it's really just it's psychologically a very, very disturbing book and miniseries. And the miniseries is extremely well done. I was very, very pleased. It's not often you get a book.
I liked it. There's a scene in one of the episodes, Andrew, if you remember, where the wife of, is it the captain or somebody else, is just so concerned because they haven't returned. And yeah, she's trying to get help. It's been like 2 years since I've seen this, but she's trying to get help from wherever she can get it. And she says, I went outside. It's winter in, I think, London, where they're at. She said, I went outside and I stood in the snow, and I couldn't stay out there for more than 2 or 3 minutes before I was just freezing. And my husband is in this 24/7, words to that effect. Trying to bring it home to these people. So.
I really like a lot of Victorian English things are romanticized, and it's so stripped down, and the people look so sickly, and the clothes look so uncomfortable, and it really gives you the atmosphere of much more of what life really was like during that period in the world.
Yeah, it's not all foofy Anne Rice beauty. It's more like gritty and smelly and gross, like it probably was. Yeah.
Regardless of how you feel about the Thanksgiving holiday, it's an American holiday. I'll sound like Pollyanna here, but I just feel like having an attitude of things 24/7, as much as you can, we're all human, is just healthy. And I often think, I got a chronic illness and a lot of physical pain, but I often think how lucky I am that I wasn't born, say, 1,000 years ago in medieval Europe in the Dark Ages, or as you say, at the time of sorry, I just lost the name of this.
The Terror.
The Terror, yeah. Or hell, I was born in 1971, but I wasn't born in 1971 in an impoverished third world country, and I'm starving constantly. I guess my point is those people would love to have my problems. So,
Mike, I've been fortunate to travel all over the world, and one of the things that I have found, the poorest people in America are better off than 99% of the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of these real rah, America first, America best. But when you compare just the quality of life that just the average person has in America, it's so vastly better than most of the people on earth. And it's so vastly better than it was just a few years ago. The good old days were really, really hard and bad.
There's a time travel movie, and I can't remember the name right now, but he's like, he jumps into the past and he sees the situation of this guy that's in the snow that's the same age as him, but he just lives this brutal life, and he's like, man, the past sucks, and it did for so much.
I stayed with a guy in Japan, and his buddy whispered to me, hey, your host is rich. And they had, this was 25 years ago, they had solar panels on their roof. They didn't have central heat in their house. They had 3 generations living in their home. And these people were supposedly rich. This guy had just a big, huge business.
Just to be fair, though, but for Japan, though, that lack of heating and little space heaters all around, that's really typical.
It is, but
Yeah.
the reason is that it's so expensive to be able to generate electricity because there's no natural resources on the island.
Right.
But they had solar panels, on every part of the house 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And this guy was loaded, according to his friends.
Yeah,
And just the standard of living in America for the average person was better than that guy's standard of living.
Yeah, I think my point is just in general, just perspective that, someone born 1,000 years ago or in an impoverished nation, I haven't had an easy life and I'm in physical pain much of the time. But my point is, they would love to have my problems. So I look at it from that perspective, that I'm really, really lucky despite any relatively small problems I might have. Last thing I want to point out is I think it was Raymond on the live chat said in regards to the winter movies, Andrew, that you like to watch this time of year, winter horror, The Last Winter.
Yeah.
And that's a really good film.
That's a Ron Perlman vehicle.
I wouldn't call it a vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good movie.
But it is, and it's a lot of and Perlman's fun in it for sure.
Yeah, I'm Ron Perlman. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. So, all right. Well, you guys got big plans for the weekend? Yeah, you got a prize, Matt.
Yep. So remember, if you want to win this French language comic, you don't have to speak French to look at the pictures. They're beautiful. Just send an email to ezineprizes@gmail.com and put Monde, Mondes, in the subject heading, and we'll draw a winner in about 6 weeks, probably the first week of January. You could win.
Yep. So anyway, thanks everybody for being here. And if you're not a Patreon, please consider it. You get a lot of fun extra stuff. People like Philip Gillot and Victor Laval, they're Patreons. So, be cool like Victor. Anyway, thanks everybody for the support, and I hope everybody has a happy holiday. And we will see you.
But are we going to have something on Thanksgiving weekend?
I'm planning on it. Let's see who I have scheduled. Give me a second here. Click over to the podcast page. Oh yeah, we definitely are. Catriona Ward, who wrote the Last House on Needless Street. Really, really good book. So yeah, next week we will definitely be here. So anyway, thanks everybody, and we'll see you then.
Happy
Have a good weekend.
Thanksgiving.
Goodbye, all.